Joe Rogan offers to, well, doesn't really offer, but is open to offering a debate, and Donald Trump accepts. Is Biden going to do it? I'm going to talk about it here. Let's get right into it. Tim Kennedy goes on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he says this. He says, on my podcast with Joe Rogan, he offered to moderate a debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It will be 4 hours with no live audience, just the two candidates, cameras, and their vision on how to move the country forward. Who wants this? I heard the audio clip. So Tim Kennedy, it's actually a really good podcast. You guys should go watch it. There's a part of it that he talks about the riots and the protests and how those could be dangerous, and just with the state of the country. It's actually a pretty cool podcast, the parts that I've heard. I don't be sitting through listening to, all of Joe Rogan's stuff, but I listened to enough of it. And the parts that I heard, really cool podcast. And in it came up this idea of potentially Joe hosting a debate with Trump and Biden. Okay, now there's going to be a tangible application I'm going to tie this into, okay? But first of all, that would be crazy, right? And they just basically talked about, listen, the whole debate format is outdated. You got 1 hour, 1 hour 30 with the commercial breaks. The whole thing is just kind of played. Like, the whole concept is played. And Joe Rogan said, listen, I don't think Joe Biden will make the debate. I don't think he can last. I don't think cognitively he's there. He's been saying this for a while about Joe Biden. From some of the videos I've seen, this isn't a political statement. This is just an observational statement. It does seem like he's struggling cognitively. But then Joe Biden, Joe Biden then flipped it in an interview, said, no, Donald Trump's actually the one that's showing cognitive decline. Either way, both of these guys I think will be the oldest president elected, regardless on which one we elect. So that's interesting. Now, so they talk about this thing, and he says, listen, I would be down to host this debate, but no outside people, no handlers, 4 hour, 3 hours long, just me and them and the candidates, right? Which is like, come on, like, this ain't never going to happen. Like, this is never going to happen, right? This is never going to happen. And sure enough, I see this tweet, and you know how I saw this tweet? Check this out. I see this tweet from, again, Tim Kennedy on my podcast, Joe Rogan. He offered to moderate a debate. Who wants this? Swipe up. Look who retweeted it. This is the real account. Donald J. Trump. I do. Donald J. Trump. This man then accepted the debate on Joe Rogan. What a time to be alive. Now, I don't think there's a chance that this debate is actually happening. It would be crazy if it would. I think Joe Biden should put his money where his mouth is. I think Joe Biden should put his money. I think Joe Biden should put his money where his mouth is. I think he should go on. I think this would be unprecedented. This would be crazy. 2020's already been a wild year. And why not? Why not let the people get someone that's, Joe Rogan is not a far left radical leftist, and he's definitely not a Republican. This would be good. This would be good for the country. This would be good for everybody, except whoever's dealing with cognitive decline and has handlers that's not going to let them go on there. And I think we know who that is at this point. Again, not a political statement, observational statement. I doubt this is going to happen. But why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing this up? Why is this important? Why is this important? Guys, Joe Rogan is a podcaster. He's a commentator on the UFC. He's a stand-up comedian. Just let that sit in for a second. That the president, the current president, would be willing to go on a podcast in long form and debate, have a presidential debate on a podcast. Just let that sit in for a second. Let your mind run. What does that actually mean? Think about where we are in the light of media. This isn't Fox News, NBC, CBS, CNN. This isn't fake news. This isn't somebody with a bunch of political acclaim and experience. This is a podcaster who one of the candidates said, I'm down. I want to smoke. Okay? This is a podcaster. Now, granted, he's the $100 million man. This man signed a crazy deal with Spotify, which I'm going to talk about here in a sec. I'm actually something Alex Jones said. I'm going to play you guys an Alex Jones clip in the next segment. But this is a podcaster who got one of the presidential candidates or the current president to agree in doing a 3 to 4 hour debate on a podcast. Sometimes we let this stuff kind of go past us and we don't really think and sit and process it, right? This is unprecedented in the time of media, in the time of social media, in the time that, remember, Joe Rogan is just him and Jamie. I mean, he probably has an attorney and management, that kind of stuff, but that's not a mad production. That's not a huge production, right? Just like this whole situation is just me. There's nobody behind the cameras. There's no camera guys, right? This is the era that we're living in. So if you are, a lot of you are aspiring artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, designers, producers, what does that tell you about the climate that we're in right now? And granted, Joe Rogan had a bit of a profile. He was, he is a comedian. He had a bit of a profile, but this man built the largest media podcast in the world. A podcast with him and one other person. They say that Elon Musk interview did 100 million views. 100 million views. Think about that. Just let that set in. So if you're a creative, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone who wants to see things progress in terms of just reasonable people who are influencing society, reasonable people who are going to have thoughtful discussions. We're not going to just be so polarized and be in our little echo chamber. I know a lot of you guys live in the echo chamber, and anything that the Democrats do is evil, and they're radical Marxist leftists. And then there's some of you guys that are in your, Republican echo chamber, and your Democrat, your liberal chamber. Anything the Republicans do is fascist and racist. I know we're in our echo chambers, and I know it feels good to just consume the same information. But this is people that are reasonable, that want to be in the middle and want to have conversations. This is crazy. Now, let me tie it into a little verse for you in case you haven't read your Bible today. Check this out. This is one of my favorite verses in Proverbs, and this should apply to you. This is something I want you guys to think about. Proverbs 12:11. It says, this is the verse that I heard on the Dave Ramsey show that changed my life. And again, this video is not about politics. I'm politically agnostic, unless you couldn't say. This is not about politics. But this verse right here completely changed everything to me about how I started pursuing media and music. It says, those who work their land will have what? Abundant food. But those who chase fantasies have no sense. Okay? Those who work their land have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. I'm going to pull up another translation. Why am I talking about this? I'm going to tell you why. A hard worker has plenty of food, but a person who chases fantasies has no sense. Why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about this? Because are you working your land? Are you doing the things that you know you should be doing in this climate right now? And I'm not saying I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan, or you're going to be the next Joe Rogan, or you're going to be some superstar. I'm saying the land is fertile. I'm saying the land is fertile and the workers are few. I know I'm tying into Jesus parallel. But guys, this is an amazing time. If you are a creative, that do you know your land? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing in this season? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing in this season? Right? Or are you chasing a fantasy? Are you waiting for a label to put you on? Are you waiting for someone to swoop in and rescue you? Are you waiting to sign a major deal? Are you waiting for someone to give you a platform? Or are you working your land? Are you working your land? Because if it says here, if you work your land, you will have abundant food. I'm not preaching a prosperity gospel. Don't go there with me. Some of y'all get real goofy when I start talking about success and abundance. Okay, don't do that. Don't do that with me. I'm not the prosperity gospel guy. I'm just reading you guys what the verse says. Those who work their land. What is your land? What is your land in this season? Will have abundant. There's extra. But those who chase fantasies, are you chasing a rap fantasy? Are you chasing a rap fantasy? Are you chasing a YouTube fantasy? Are you trying to be some kind of cool influencer and thinking that you're like Casey Neistat or whatever, and you just got this cool? Or are you actually helping people and adding value to people? Do you think you're some kind of cool rock star and rap star because you're just so talented and God's just going to drop all these blessings on you because you're just so cool and unique? Are you actually helping people with your art? right? And those who chase fantasies have no sense. I remember driving. I was working a job at the time. This had to be 2010. And I remember driving. I was working with adults with developmental disabilities during this season of my life. It was actually a really cool job. I would pick up a group of 3 every morning. We'd go to the gym. We'd go to school. We'd go to the volunteer library, stuff like that. It was a super cool job. And I remember listening to the Dave Ramsey podcast and hearing this verse. And I was working. And I was also doing music. I was hustling. I was trying to get out of debt. That's why I was listening to Dave Ramsey every single day. I was trying to get out of debt. We had a gang of debt. I made every poor decision you can make with money. And I remember hearing this verse, and it set it off, and it lit a fire into me. And I said, you know what? This music thing is either going to work or I'm going to stop chasing fantasies. I'm going to get real with myself. See, this music, I'm either going to approach this like a business and a media company, or I'm just going to go get a job. And I'm just going to work a job, and I'm going to honor God in that, right? A lot of us need to figure out what our land is. A lot of us need to figure out what working our land looks like in 2020. And here's the deal. If you're creative, and if you have some degree of expertise, if you have some degree of value, this is a great time, man. This is a great time, and I want to encourage you guys. This should be encouraging to you. Okay, this should be encouraging to you. And a lot of people want to blame capitalism, and they want to blame the system. And they listen. I don't capitalism, social, whatever. Ethical wealth building right now in 2020 exists. We're in the middle of the biggest technological revolution. We're in the middle of the biggest social media revolution. Ethical wealth building exists right now. There's a link in my bio. Right now, you can go watch the video. It's a video about Naval, how to get rich without getting lucky. It exists right now. So if you don't like the word capitalism, don't use the word capitalism. Just use it. Just change it to ethical free market economy, ethical wealth building. It exists right now. It exists right now. And I would implore you, if you identify as a Christian, maybe there's a degree of obligation that we need, according to Matthew 25, according to the parable of the talents, to honor God with our time, treasure, with our opportunities, with the era that he strategically placed us in. You could have been born 200 years ago. You could have been born 1,000 years ago. You're born here now. You're watching this, and the fact that the ironic part is that those of you guys who are critiquing capitalism while watching this video on an Apple device on YouTube, that's hilarious to me. That's hilarious to me. So do what you want with that information. Big idea. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Ask yourself the question, do you have abundant food, and are you working your land? Are you working your land, or are you chasing fantasy? That's the question I want you guys to ask yourself right now.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.